President Trump is heading to Iowa next week, the beginning of what the White House says will be weekly trips across the country to ramp up enthusiasm ahead of the midterms. His trip comes just as a brand new New York Times poll shows his approval rating is down to 34% with independent voters. 52% say the country is worse off than it was when he took office a year ago. The president slammed both the paper and the poll, writing, quote, "The Times Siena poll, which is always tremendously negative to me, especially just before the election of 2024, where I won by a landslide, will be added to my lawsuit against the failing New York Times." Joining me now, Sarah Matthews, former Trump White House Deputy Press Secretary, now spokesperson for Home of the Brave. Here in studio, Yasmin Radjy, the executive director of the progressive political group Swing Left. It's great to have both of you here. Sarah, I mean, traditionally, when a president is unpopular, members of his party actually don't want him to come visit. I mean, we saw that with Joe Biden, who's not alone in that. But are there places you think we're sending Trump might be useful for Republicans, or should he just stay home?
I would tend to think right now that having him out on the campaign trail is probably music to Democrats' ears. I think that normally in past election cycles, when Trump hasn't been on the ballot, it has been useful for Republicans to have him out there. He's able to excite the base and get low propensity voters out to the polls, even when he is not on the ballot. But the thing is that heading into the 2026 midterms, even though Trump is not on the ballot, his policies will be, and it's proven to be very unpopular, as we've seen in this polling and other polling as well, that typically when it comes to economy and immigration, those are two of his top issues, and he is now tanking on those issues. And so if I'm a Republican running in the 2026 midterms, I probably don't want to be campaigning with Trump, because I think that it would be tough to explain to voters when Trump is out there giving speeches saying that we've defeated inflation and that the economy is great. How do you square that circle with voters who are not experiencing those things?
So, Yasmin, your organization is all about turnout. Is him going on the campaign trail week after week after week music to the ears of Democrats? Or because, mentioning, as Sarah did, low propensity voters, those are not folks who necessarily cover all the ups and downs that most of us feel like we're very informed about. And he has shown an ability to get them fired up. So what do you make of the White House move?
I think it's great for Democrats. We welcome him to visit every competitive swing district because, just as Sarah said, he is so unpopular. It's poll after poll of where he is with swing voters.
You were just in Iowa? Is that right?
I wasn't just in Iowa, but our volunteers have been. They've been out knocking on doors. I used to live in Iowa, and I'm Iowans are very, very moderate, welcoming people. Iowa used to have the highest rate of refugee resettlement in the whole country. So conservative Republicans I used to organize with would host refugees in their homes, would open up their congregations to make sure that refugees had a place to worship. And right now, what we're seeing in two of the most competitive, flippable Republican-held districts in the country, one is held by Republican Zach Nunn, one Marionette Miller-Meeks in Iowa. These are voters who are really, really against how their Republican congresspeople are voting on everything from issues that really impact farmers. Just this week, there was a big bill that those two Republicans voted against the interests of Iowa farmers. I mean, are they out of their minds? On rural hospitals are closing. The list goes on. And I think what I want to bring home for folks is one of these races was won by just 799 votes. I mean, that is a rounding error if I've ever seen one. And what we're doing at Swing Left is we're out talking to voters, and not just strong Dem voters. We're talking to the Republican voters, the independent voters, the low propensity voters, as you said. And what we're finding is, we had a volunteer who went out and knocked on the door of a gentleman who voted for Trump, was wearing an AR-15 T-shirt, had a Glock on his hip. Our volunteer talked literally on his hip. And our volunteer had an incredibly meaningful, thoughtful conversation with him. They didn't agree on everything. But what he said was he feels like Americans have become less neighborly, less welcoming to their strangers. And it's not just a nice anecdote that makes us feel good. When we look at the numbers in these districts, 45% of the people that we consider low Democratic score people, we don't even spend a dollar talking to. We don't spend a minute talking to them. And 10 to 15% of those in these Iowa districts are movable. And so we don't have to win over all of them. We've just got to win over 2%. And if Trump wants to spend more time there, he's going to help us recruit that 2% faster and faster, as long as we do the work as Democrats to listen and to rebuild the trust that we've lost.
Sarah, when we talk about Donald Trump, he's not someone who, when the polls are bad, thinks that the polls are legitimate, right? And we just saw that in the tweet that he put out on Truth Social. But I wonder if you think this decision to have him go out in January versus what they did the last time, which is wait until after Labor Day, is an indication that they know within the White House they're in trouble.
Yeah, as you mentioned, it's a tale as old as time when it comes to Donald Trump in polling. And if it's a favorable poll to him, then it's the best poll ever. But if it's unfavorable to him, then it's fake news. But I think that this decision by the White House to have him out on the campaign trail so early shows that they are worried. Obviously, historically, midterm elections are not good for the party of the president. But I do think that they're seeing his numbers tank on things that he has normally been well received on when it comes to the economy and immigration. And now that he's tanking on those things, you're seeing them sort of adjust their messaging. Even just yesterday with J.D. Vance in his speech in Minnesota, where he seemed to claw back some of his language about ICE having total immunity. I think that shows me that they see the polls. They know that they're underwater on some of these issues that they should be strong on. And so they're trying to adjust the messaging. But I don't think that Trump is able to be so adept and adjust his messaging. I think that he's going to go out there and declare triumph on the economy and praise ICE and all of these things, even though we're seeing in the latest New York Times poll that 61% of Americans think ICE has gone too far. But I think that the White House is certainly worried about what the outcome for the midterms is, especially when it comes to the House.
So, Yasmin, I think one of the things that we've seen with the huge numbers, tens of hundreds of thousands of people who have been taking to the streets, most recently about ICE, right? The problem may not be firing up the left, but how do you deploy that? How do you take that energy and move it into action that actually works? And Swing Left is expanding a program that you've had to target, 33 competitive districts? Can you tell us more about what you think is working now in 2026?
Yes. I think so many people want to do something that meets this moment. This is a moment where so many of us feel more overwhelmed than in 2018 about the stakes. And so what we're hearing over and over from volunteers is they want to sink their teeth into something they know will make a difference. And, we also have to look in the mirror as Democrats and know the way we've been campaigning is full of issues. We've got a trust problem with voters. And so what we have through our Ground Truth program is an opportunity for anybody in the country who is outraged at what's going on, who wants to do more than protest, to come and join us in the most competitive swing district near them. Turns out almost all of us live near a competitive swing district, even if we don't know that, and to join us on a new way of campaigning that is anchored on rebuilding trust for Democrats, not just anti-Trump, by listening. And that means going out and talking to voters that we might disagree with.
The guy with the Glock.
The guy with the Glock. We don't have to agree with him on everything. We need to agree on enough to convince that person to vote for Democrats. And we know that when we do that, when we listen, we can persuade people. But what we've done is we just haven't given people the opportunity to spend the time with voters different from them because we assume that people aren't going to get enthusiastic until the final weeks of the election. So we narrow our list. We talk to people late, transactionally, without curiosity. We got to start talking to people now. While there's primaries going on, we've got to be out talking to people in races like those 2 competitive Iowa districts, but 33 districts across the country. And we've also got to remember we lost the House by 7,309 votes. That is nothing. We can win that. We can win by a really substantial margin if folks join us. So we hope they'll go to ourgroundtruth.org and sign up because it's not just what will make a difference to win the election. It'll also help give us a sense of agency in a moment when authoritarian rulers try to strip us of our feeling of agency so that we pull back rather than lean in to change.
Yasmin, it's always good to see you. Sarah Matthews, thank you as well. And coming